All right, we have gone live. All right, Thursday. All right. All right, it's Thursday. What time is it? 9 o'clock your time, Central
9
Time?
p.m.
Episode 28 of the InfoSec to Insanity podcast. If you're listening, I'm happy you're here. Tonight we have kind of a touchy subject, Matt. We're not really talking specifically about information security. We're talking about civil liberties.
Yeah, we wanted to stir the pot, flip it up, and just not always be talking about InfoSec, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to InfoSec, but not the tech side, right? This is about awareness and things like that, accountability.
I have a quick question for you. Whenever you type InfoSec, have you ever accidentally typed InfoSec?
Maybe it wasn't an accident.
Okay, because the X is right next to the C.
It is, yep.
I've done that.
I took home row class, and like they taught me how to type in middle school, so I did home row, and yeah. I mean, maybe it was an accident. I don't remember, but very interesting.
So this topic came up in the last podcast.
It did.
The last podcast, I don't even remember the context of where it came up in the conversation, but it was towards the end of the show. And we brought up civil liberties, and we thought about, man, things have really changed since pre-9/11. Now, the date today is April 3rd, so there's no correlation date-wise between now and 9/11. It just happened to come up in a conversation. I thought, man, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's different today than pre-9/11, because I think, the longer and the further we get from 9/11, the less number of people will remember what it was like before 9/11.
I think that's by design.
Well, it makes you think, because we had a bunch of rights then that we no longer have now. And a lot of these things were supposed to be temporary, but here we are almost 25 years later, and they're still here. If not just here, but they're worse.
What if I told you the government knows more about your habits, your day-to-day life stuff than your spouse? This isn't sci-fi, it's real.
Not just your spouse, probably more about you than you.
Yeah.
You just asked me what I was doing. You just asked me what's, before the show, we were just chatting, and you asked me what's new, in the last week. I'm like, man, I can't remember what went on in the last week. The NSA knows what went on with me.
They know exactly where you were and all kinds of shit.
Now, some people think, when you talk about this stuff, that it's tinfoil hat stuff, but it's not. Let's talk about some of the things that the NSA can do. I have a list of 10 things that the NSA can do that you may not know that they can do. You want to talk about that?
I was kind of curious. Do you want to jump right into that? Are you going to tie it back to like where we came from? Do you think maybe we talk about what was supposed to be in place pre 9/11 because to your point, some people don't know. And I think that's by design. These things happen over periods of years, but maybe we talk a little bit.
You think it's by design? What do you mean by design? You think the government,
I'm not sure it's the government
taking away civil liberties on purpose?
I'm not sure it's the government or a group of people or a cabal, whatever these people are talking about. I just think there's something that's happening. Like even when I talk to like my mom, or I used to talk to my grandpa, they're not used to things changing, because things change over a long period of time. If you slowly take something away or change it, the real-time brain processing doesn't process it until like it's too late. So I think if someone is trying to change things or get us to a certain point, that a long-term plan like 24 years of changing things would be a good way to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's like where you make those small little compromises over and over and over again over a long period of time. And at the time that you're making these compromises, they seem inconsequential. Like, yeah, it's just a little thing, no big deal. But then you add them all up and it becomes a really big change. It's like taking yourself a degree off course, another degree off course, another degree off course. You do that over a period of, I don't know, say one degree a year. In 360 years, you circled back. In 180 years, you're looking the other way. So the direction you thought you were going, and that's the thing, it happens so slowly. But then we had something that happened on 9/11. And this is, as a social engineer myself, one of the best things to take advantage of on a target is emotion. And so we had really, really, really high emotions on 9/11. We had a lot of fear. Everybody was afraid. And that's the perfect time to put in changes, make changes that seem completely justified. Yep. And now you look back and it's just the way it's always been now because it's been 25 years. So few people remember, and people just in general have a short memory span. They get outraged for a little bit, then they calm down and they go about and they just adjust.
I personally don't remember pre 9/11 because I was a freshman in high school. So anything related to travel, laws, stuff like that, I was a punk ass kid.
So you were 16 in 16, 17 and during 9/11?
Yep.
Do you remember what you were doing?
I do. I was actually, it was first hour of English class, and we were transitioning between classes, and they turned, one of the teachers turned it on. Next thing you know, all the teachers had it on, and like all we did was watch TV all day. And when I got to my second period class, it was either second or third period. I think it was second, and it was live, and they were actually showing the second plane crashing.
Okay. So I was 30 years old when 9/11 happened. And so I certainly remember what it was like before that. But, if you're not paying attention, things get away from you. And it wasn't really until we talked last week, because I've had this discussion before, talking with friends like, man, we've really given up a lot of things since 9/11. And you name off a few, but you didn't, I didn't really do any research about it. I just thought, yeah, some things have changed. But when you do some research and you actually open your eyes and take a look around, you realize how much has actually changed. I mean, it's like night and day. Civil liberties, when we say civil liberties, we're talking rights. You can almost use civil liberties and civil rights, I think, interchangeably. But you had certain rights. You had certain rights to privacy. You had certain rights to illegal search and seizure. You had the
freedom of assembly, warrantless search and seizure, due process, unusual punishment, torture.
Your right was you had to have a warrant to do search and seizure, but you've given that up now for the most part. Yep. I mean, there's certainly places when it comes down to physically walking into your house and searching things physically. Yeah, you still need a search warrant for that. But the information that the NSA is collecting about
the digital realm,
it's with the Patriot Act and particularly Section 702, they are capturing tons and tons and tons of data about everybody. And they say, well, it's metadata.
Well, yeah,
metadata, which is
the real people know metadata.
Data.
Real people know metadata is what you want. They're using it because people aren't educated, and it's crazy. And so they've been busted many times. They're just like, oh, it was an accident.
Well, there's no busted about it. I mean, you have the right to do it.
Well, there's some sort of oversight, and they've had to go and testify a couple times. Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no oversight. It's just a fucking circus. For people who don't know what metadata is just data about data. So I'll give you an example. Rather than the NSA having the legal, right to collect your phone calls, they collect the logs of your phone calls. So
who you called, when you called.
Exactly. And for how long, so they may not know the content, and actually they do, but this is what they say. It's metadata. So it's data about data, and they have the legal authority to do this. This is part of the Patriot Act. This is one of the rights that you gave up at the Patriot Act. Or we all gave it up. I mean, not just you. I mean, we all did it, right? So they can now collect. They used to have to get warrants to collect this data. But now you have warrantless taps. And it's all in the physical, like you said, it's all in the digital realm. And it's a lot of the same things that we face when dealing with information security, right? Some of the things I would do,
I would argue
people,
it's exactly the same.
yeah. So people don't think, well, the data stuff, because they don't see it. It doesn't, it's not something they can touch. And so, what a perfect thing to take advantage of, right? Just completely own your privacy, use fear to make it happen. And, it may have been unintentional. I mean, give people the benefit of the doubt, right? They might have said, well, the Patriot Act, so we can try to intercept terrorists, right? Try to find, terrorists residing in the United States that are collaborating or corroborating with, Al Qaeda or, whatever else. That was the premise. But why are we still doing it the way we're doing it today? We still have threats for sure, but can we not find, and the reason why nobody's been called to account, we haven't redesigned anything here, is because most people don't even know about it. Most people just let it go.
It's the way it is because it's been 24 years. We're numb.
Well, it doesn't
and
affect my daily life, right? I still went to work today. I still did my shit, still played my games on my phone, still came home, had dinner, put my kids to bed, watched Netflix. My day was unaffected by any of this.
So,
but it's the accumulation of this data and how it can be used against you when it needs to be used against you. That's when you're going to wish that you would have known.
I've gone through so many iterations of this over the last 15 years. Like, I used to be, super privacy guy. I wrote a privacy paper in college. I used to preach to everybody about data privacy. And then, I think eventually I got beaten down with everyone just says, oh, well, you're not doing anything bad, don't worry about it. But it always goes back to the accountability thing. No one's asking, they're just saying, I'm good, I'm not doing anything wrong, instead of asking why. To your point, why are we still doing it this way, especially with no oversight? Because no one will admit it, but yeah, there's little cells of everybody doing their own thing.
Well, and the fact of the matter, I mean, this is not an election issue. Did you hear about any of this being talked about in the last election?
Oh, the election issues are always the same 5 wedge issues that drive emotion, and it's the same thing. I don't think
right?
I don't think anybody ever notices that either. Nothing is, the border's never a thing, guns are never a thing until it's an election. It's the same thing all the time. Broken record.
Right. And this hasn't been really an election issue,
It should be.
Absolutely, it should be. But the fact of the matter is people aren't talking about it. People aren't being open about it. People aren't being honest about it. So before 9/11, you could surveil U.S. citizens, but you had to have a warrant. And in order to get a warrant, you had to have probable cause. So there had to be probable cause. You had to have a probable belief that there was a crime being committed. And then you could get a warrant from a judge, and then you could surveil U.S. citizens. FISA existed pre 9/11. So you hear about FISA all the time, right? This FISA court and people.
The invisible court.
Right. FISA existed back, pre 9/11, but it was much more targeted. And the thing that FISA was not legal to do was bulk data collection. You could use the FISA court to do kind of this secret sort of surveillance of specific targets, but you couldn't do bulk data collection pre 9/11. Intelligence sharing between the agencies like the FBI, CIA, the other 3 letters, NSA, that was limited, and it was limited on purpose.
They all have different objectives.
Right. But then, 9/11, and if you were around, you may not remember this, but some of the things that happened after 9/11 was people are always, why? What happened? What? Somebody's got to pay for this. What went wrong? And one of the things that they pointed out was the intelligence agencies didn't work together.
Yeah, didn't one have intel on something in California or something, and they didn't share with it?
But the thing is those faults weren't because the agencies weren't sharing data. Those were faults because the agencies sucked with the data. When the FBI had some of the information that they had about Al Qaeda cells and things happening inside the United States, they could have acted upon it, but they didn't. They ran it up the chain, and the chain, it was just shitty leadership. So that was pre 9/11. So those 3 things, right? In terms of surveillance and privacy, you had to have warrants, no bulk data collection stuff. Intelligence sharing between the agencies was limited, and it was that way on purpose. Post 9/11, the Patriot Act comes. The Patriot Act was passed in October. So September, October, perfect time, to pass something like that because everybody's full of emotions.
Yeah, because it's in an anniversary.
Yeah. No, it was 2001. I mean, Patriot Act came October 2001.
Like right after.
Yeah. Like within 2 months. And Section 702 of FISA appeared that didn't come around until 2008. But what both of those did is it really opened the floodgates to mass surveillance. Right? That's what allowed us to have things like Prism and X key score and these other things. So for listeners, if you want to know what these things are, Google them.
So just a quick pivot and probably touchy.
Why are we pivoting?
Well,
we shouldn't be pivoting. We're talking about surveillance and privacy.
It's a pivot, not a pivot, because I think it's relevant to this conversation. So X key score and all those things, we learned about them through a particular person.
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
I'm still in the middle of contrasting what it was like pre 9/11 to what it is today.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can dig into all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about whistleblowers. I think we should talk about whistleblowers and some of the shit that happens to whistleblowers.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why when you and I were talking before we got on this, you were like, I might get arrested. Like, no, you're not, because they do this to whistleblowers.
Well, there's also, and I think this is going to be extremely helpful for my mental health, is because I've wanted to talk about this like this for a long time, but all the things that we're going through create a crazy amount of internal paranoia.
Well, I mean, paranoia is not going to do anything for you. I mean,
but if you can't manage it, it eats you.
Then it sucks. But I'm just saying it's not that I don't think it's anything to be paranoid about. It's the current state of affairs, and there's really not much you can do about it. If they're going to use something, because that's the second piece, right? They may have all the data, they may have all these things. It's how they're going to use it and where they're going to use it. And I mean, you're just not a target, and neither am I, unless I started spewing some things that I knew about that weren't already in the public domain, then you got some shit to deal with for sure. But so post 9/11, we had Patriot Act, Section 702 of FISA came in 2008, which really opened that mass surveillance. So no longer do I really need warrants and probable cause. I can do wireless taps, and I can start to do the bulk data collection stuff, right? I can start doing things like collecting all that metadata about everybody. So this is when things like Prism came about. The Prism program was this, if you remember when this first came out, it was where big tech was cooperating with the government. Folks from the government.
Access.
Yeah. So folks from the government went to Microsoft, Google, Apple, Facebook, all the big Twitter, went to all of them and got direct access to the data. So they tapped all the user data, the emails, video chats, file transfers, everything, you name it. That was Prism. Prism was completely legal.
It was a collection of all that data with a search built on top of it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, they have some serious data lakes for sure. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Like
Yeah, I mean, you could just type in like what was X person doing, and it would pull back like all like crazy shit because it has all the things, right?
Yeah, for sure. So the Prism program came about. Another tool that you don't hear much about is X key score. X key score it's a tool that lets analysts, to your point, search almost everything you do on the internet in real time. So what you're doing right now, whatever you're typing in your computer right now, Matt, X key score can grab that.
I'm typing X key score actually. There you go.
Okay.
I wonder if that DOSes it if you type itself.
I don't know. But email, browsing history, chats, everything, fair game. All that stuff didn't come about until after 9/11. Other things with 9/11. Oh, so then we had this thing called, you might have heard this, incidental collection.
Right.
The incidental collection, this is actual communication. So I talked before about metadata. That's legal. This collecting your actual conversations on phones and things, that's not legal. But then there's these things that they call incidental collection of people's communications, which is actually very common.
Because all
And
data is
none of
like
that, as far as I know, is prosecuted.
it's all traveling on the same pipe because data is like, you know, on a lot. It's not like a phone call where you just like tap in and listen to a specific thing. Everything, it's a highway. You're gonna collect everything. Like this should have been known from the start.
Right. Other things about post 9/11 that weren't there before: facial recognition and geolocation tracking. Those have spread everywhere. Those things weren't around pre 9/11, so you didn't have to worry about that. So now, not only knowing what I'm doing online all the time, but knowing my physical location, facial recognition is largely, there's no rules for it. So everywhere you go, cameras can be capturing your photo, identifying you, plotting where you're at on a map. I mean, it's trivial for the government to find out where you're at any given time.
I do have a tip. I mean, it's the little things that we can do. You know, when you go to the airport, you're flying internationally, they say you have to do facial recognition. There is no law that mandates that you have to do that. You can tell them you don't want to do facial recognition and you want to do the manual process where they actually scan your passport. It's not like you're changing, crazy things, but it's just one way we can push back.
Yeah.
But they won't tell you that at the airport.
Well, and sadly, they're doing the facial recognition anyway.
Yeah,
It's not
throughout
like
the whole airport.
It's not like they turned off the camera. I mean, sadly, man, I like your approach because it does force the issue, and people should be asking questions more.
Mm-hmm.
There's no situational awareness. People walk around and don't even notice cameras around. They don't notice anything, really.
I'm driving down the highway and I'm like, what the hell is that on top of that pole there? What is that there? Like, there's antennas and everywhere on like every telephone pole. It's insane.
So which country in the world do you think has the most surveillance cameras per capita? Is it China? Is it Russia? US? What do you think?
I think a lot of people will say China. I personally think it's the US. I just don't know if we have a real number.
It is the US. Yeah, and there is a number. I did a research on that a while back. I don't remember the exact number, but the United States per capita. And so you have a communist. I don't know if people have been to China before, but man, that government has like strict control over everybody.
It's locked down like a mofo.
So a lot of these things, it goes back to using it. If you had a true like dictator in power who knew how to use this data, you could take control of the entire United States and just force everybody to do what you want them to do. I mean, lock it all down. You have the ability to do that with this data. So other things pre 9/11, travel and movement. You mentioned, airports. I remember all the way back to when you could smoke on airplanes, but pre 9/11 airport security was relatively fast and minimally invasive. People could go, like you could have family go to your terminal with you, your gate, and see you off and say goodbye. Thought the only thing you had was metal detectors.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you could walk up, everybody could walk up to the gate without a ticket. ID checks were less standardized. Mostly they were used for just confirming your reservation. It wasn't used to confirm that you belong there.
I feel like that has to be like 60 years ago or something, but it's really not.
That's the thing, man. I mean,
yeah,
because if you take like this current generation, the generation after mine, this is the way it's always been. So they're not going to question any of these things. They're not going to feel like any of their civil liberties have ever been violated because they never had them to begin with. Whereas people like me and older, we remember. And so we know the civil liberties that we've given up, and we don't know the consequences or the cost of it yet, but there is going to be consequences and there is going to be a cost associated with it. Because you're trusting other people with all this sensitive information, your privacy, your life, your lifestyle, who you talk to, I mean, everything. And do you trust them with it? Because pre 9/11, they didn't have the rights to any of this. You actually had privacy. You could actually, your movement within the United States wasn't tracked. You know what I mean? You had freedom. That's what freedom is.
So
So posting.
I'll interject and play a little game here. So there was a judge back in the early 1900s, Louis Brandeis. That person was very pro privacy. And back then, there was a really big invention coming around called the Kodak camera. People were freaking out about their pictures taken and losing privacy. Louis Brandeis said the famous quote is, "What used to be whispered in the closets is now shouted from the rooftop." So I'm curious, this same conversation has been happening over 100 years ago. Is it the same conversation and it just looks different, where like we didn't really learn anything, or is it an actual different conversation?
I think it's the same conversation. I think it's just those little compromises. And we just haven't woken up to, we haven't gotten to the point where we wake up and be like, how the fuck did we get here? I don't even feel like I have control over my life anymore. I mean, when you get to that point, then something, look what's happening in China.
With the
Everybody's pretty
social
much,
credit and stuff?
no, just the no privacy. They have complete control over the population and they're compliant for the most part. Eventually it gets to a point. That's why there are civil wars that happen over the course of history, because people get tired of being taken advantage of at some point. But yeah, I think what Brandeis is talking about is just in my opinion, is just another example of one of those compromises that happened along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So post 9/11, in terms of travel and movement, the TSA was created shortly after 9/11. You know what that's like if you've ever been on an airplane. Body screening, body scanners, ID checks, long lines. But you can pay, $80 and get into that pre-check, or you could do the
Yeah, you're
clear,
paying,
whatever.
you have to pay to get somewhat close to the rights that we should have inherently.
You should, well, even beyond that, I mean, you have no right to go through pre 9/11, you really had no right to, shake me down, see what I'm carrying. I mean, I could bring shampoo in my carry-on if I wanted to. But, there's also, I mean, that's the give and take. I mean, after 9/11, it was like, oh shit, what do we need to do? But
Everything is dangerous. Lock it down.
do you remember me talking to you about the pendulum? Like with information security, you walk into a lot of organizations who haven't taken information security seriously. So the pendulum's way on the left. It's just like they're oblivious, pretty much. And then they have a breach. Something big and bad happens, and now the ball swings way over to the right. Now you've got all the budget in the world, and everybody's in a panic. It's the same kind of thing, on a mass scale with 9/11. It was, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And the pendulum swung way over to the other side, and we never brought it back. There are certain things you need to do to ensure safety, right? It's not like, I mean, pre 9/11, it was sort of like, that was too far, probably. It
Too
was
loose, yeah. You could have done
a little too
something more.
loose. Yeah, but the way it is today, it's like, seriously. And then we'll talk about measuring the effectiveness of TSA, because they suck. And to your point, like, why do I need to? So if you have this pre-check and it's $80, right, or whatever, why am I paying $80 for something you should be doing it that way to begin with? Why can't you just, everybody have pre-check? I mean, you save money if you do pre-check, because I don't have to, take my clothes off and everything. I don't know. So we didn't used to have no-fly lists. No-fly lists exist now. No-fly lists, watch lists. They are very opaque, and I don't even know how you can challenge them, but I assume they've got to be terribly difficult to challenge. So let's say that you ended up on a no-fly list for some reason.
Good luck getting off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not going to know what the list is, who's the owner of the list, or any reasoning behind it.
And there was no due process on you getting on that list. I mean, pre-9/11, there was this thing called due process where you could challenge these things. Biometric screening now is standard in many airports, like you mentioned, facial recognition. That was, obviously that didn't exist in 9/11, pre 9/11 at all. Due process and government powers, pre when you had investigations and detentions. So if somebody came, if a police officer or the federal government came to arrest you, there were strict rules on when they can detain you and when they can't detain you, especially for U.S. citizens. The same rights applied to everybody. The Constitution doesn't just apply to U.S. citizens, but it was even stricter for U.S. citizens. And then you had this habeas corpus and attorney access. They were more protected. Even in national security cases, you could still have legal representation. You had the right, you had your Fifth Amendment right, all that other stuff. Post 9/11, detention without trial it happens all the time. Look at Guantanamo Bay. Yep. You have these secret FISA courts that authorize the surveillance programs, very limited transparency. I don't know what the hell goes on in the FISA courts. I don't think most people don't.
Probably like 2 people that do.
Right. Rise of material support laws, which means that people can be prosecuted for tenuous connections to terrorism. So it's called a material support law. So let's say I donated money, or even if I took a phone call inadvertently from a terrorist and had a conversation with them, that potentially could be used against you as providing material support to a terrorist organization. It's
vague as hell.
Super vague. So you could, get detained without a trial, no due process at all, have something, about material support and keep you essentially indefinitely. And nobody would know. People that knew you would know. Other things, freedom of press. Pre 9/11, fewer national security barriers to speech and journalism. Whistleblowers had more room to speak without espionage charges. Post 9/11, whistleblowers face prison and prosecution under laws like the Espionage Act. And we'll talk about some of those people.
One of the other things, too, that is, you mentioned earlier, this term national security, that is way used too often, I think. It's the easy word to just bury something.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know what national security means anymore. It's so broad now. You've cast such a wide net with FISA Section 702 and with the Patriot Act and all the other things that support that you could literally, I think, call just about anything a national security risk.
It's like the global war on terror, broad. No, it's designed to just go on forever.
Right. The press has been chilled by surveillance raids, pressure over classified leaks. The press has become a puppet. Pre 9/11, it wasn't like that. Pre 9/11, the press actually was very critical, oftentimes, about the federal government without fear of retribution from the federal government. Whereas post 9/11, the way these things work, if you write something, you might get a call, and it might hurt.
There's probably someone checking at each news location to make sure something doesn't make it that far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Protesters, activists are sometimes surveilled under anti-terror frameworks. You can surveil anybody, so it's all justified today. Transparency and accountability. Transparency.
Do you think that we have a actual proper right to protest anymore?
It depends on who's in power.
Because I feel like anytime there's a protest, somehow it's magically now a riot and it's shut down with militarized police force. Love the police. They got to do their job. Not fully understanding why they need MRAP and all that, but okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man. It's become what we had pre 9/11 was pretty specific. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was a lot more cut and dry. You knew what was right and what was wrong. And so if you were just a law-abiding citizen, it was easy to stay the course and not get yourself in trouble. And the government wouldn't know it anyway. You know what I mean? Unless it was something, really big. Post 9/11, whoever your opponent is, and if they've got the right connections, the right power, you can use anything post 9/11 with the civil liberties that have given up to go after somebody. Even you and I having this conversation, you could twist things, take things out of context and prosecute some sort of national security twist on what we're talking about. Like
Probably.
I'm in Mexico and you're in Wisconsin, you know.
Yeah. Or corroborating something.
Yeah, like Evan must be working with the cartels or some shit, you know. I mean, you make something up.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing too. So if we didn't even talk about that, so if you have the ability to collect all this information through either Prism or just, you know, other metadata collection programs, you know, say NSA, then who's to say that you can't fabricate data? And I would know about it because you just said, you know, things that aren't true about me,
No
but
one
you've
else
got
is
all
gonna
this,
know.
right? You've got all this other circumstantial evidence. Well, we knew this, we know that, we know your wife's name, we know where you went, we know who you called, we know all these other things. And you agreed with all that stuff, right? Yeah, I agreed with all that stuff. Well, this one thing you're saying you're not agreeing with? Yeah, because it's not true. Well, we collected it the same way we collected all the other shit. So you're
It must
lying,
be
Evan.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're lying. No, I'm not lying. You know what I mean? Because I have nothing there anymore to defend myself. How do I prove? So it did become, you know, the burden of proof, certainly in a criminal matter, right? The burden of proof is proof beyond a reasonable doubt in any criminal action, I assume. I'm not a lawyer. And we should preface that. We should preface, you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving any legal advice. But logically, you can see how this can play out, especially when you can detain me without due process.
Break you down over time. I
Right.
mean,
And if you can
eventually.
use the media at the same time because they're in this game with you, good luck.
There's also, I think, a change happened from innocent until proven guilty. I think it's guilty until proven innocent with this whole data piece.
Well, it's pretty amazing because if you think about data mining, you know, on this vast amount of data, you can really tell a lot about the population and how the herd moves, right? The herd mentality is really strong. So if you can figure out these patterns in the data, you can then start to manipulate it because rumors spread faster than shit, right? On social media, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, even on LinkedIn now, right? There's no,
And
where are you going?
I'm looking for a book because you're talking about data, and this is the book here, and you're talking about manipulating the herd. This is a book called Targeted. This was written by a woman called Brittany Kaiser, part of the Cambridge Analytica stuff, where they talked about using the data to manipulate the 2016 election.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
10 years ago now already. So think about how different it is already.
Right. Yeah. It would be really easy, I think, to fabricate any story you wanted to because you've got so much other information about people. And so it'd be like, okay, Evan, you said all these 100 things that we collected about you are true, but this one thing you're saying it's not true. Well, and then you could even say, well, you fabricated that. Well, you know, then you can twist just about.
Fold easy.
Right. So transparency, accountability, out the door. Crazy. Right. And that's just some of the things that happened post 9/11.
Did you hear about what? I don't know if it happened here in the US, but during COVID, I think it was at the end of COVID, Canada had truckers on strike.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
they revoked, either they revoked their license or I think they revoked access to their bank accounts or something because they were on strike. They couldn't get paid or some crap like that. Like the government locked them out. It was like crazy. I think, yeah. And that's just another example of what's possible. Not happened here that I'm aware of, but yeah. You protest, you can't access your own stuff.
You become powerless, right? Because the more and more we use the digital realm for our reality, the more and more, you know, the data becomes powerful over reality. You know what I mean? It's like you've got logs to show I've done all these different things. And then along those same lines, you have a log that it makes perfect sense in the context of all the other logs you drew that I went here too, but I never did actually go there. Who's to say I did or didn't? you've got the logs and you'll use the logs as evidence. It's admissible.
Where's the
All I've
chain of
got is,
custody?
well, and again, without due process.
You can't even ask that question.
No. So let's talk about, what do you want to talk about next? You want to talk about NSA? You want to talk about whistleblowers, civil liberties? Do you
You're
feel
talking
like
about like the
do you
role
feel
of
like you're fucked?
NSA?
Do you feel like you're fucked yet?
Yeah. I feel like I was fucked as soon as I logged on here. Which is whatever. It's like I've been passionate about this a long time. I've always had a thought that like I could see things that other people can't see. Like people are head down, right? Awareness, like we talk about.
There might be some truth to that. I mean, if you're paying attention to what's going on, I think you would see things that other people don't see. And I think a lot of information security people see things that others don't see. And I think that's one of the reasons why we get so frustrated sometimes when we tell people, hey, pay attention. I mean, that was an obvious like scam text that you got. Why did you fall for it? And so you get frustrated by the fact that nobody's listening to something that seems so damn obvious to you. So yeah, you definitely see things that I think others don't see.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about whatever. Were you thinking like the role of NSA or like their history or what? Like when you say NSA, what do you mean?
Well, because pre 9/11, NSA was pretty much, I mean, truly, it was kind of a
No
quiet.
such agency, right?
Right. No, we knew it was there, but it was pretty much just a quiet signals intelligence agency. It was mostly focused on, foreign signals and communications. Post 9/11, we really made them into full-blown digital god mode.
Oh yeah, like global data collector.
Anything you want. You know what I mean? And it was all under the premise of, national security, right? National security prior to 9/11, I don't know what we would call it then. I think we would call it like protecting our borders. I mean, doesn't the president say it like protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic? But it was pretty much enemies. We knew the foreign ones, the ones not on U.S. soil, those were easier to keep at bay. But I think as we continued to adopt new technology just so fast, especially around 9/11, because this would have been shortly after the dot-com bubble.
Yeah,
Burst.
all the things being created, just data.
Yeah.
Network connectivity, hyperconnectivity, search, image, like everything.
Right. And I think most people were just using it, to buy books on Amazon, go to eBay. It was, search things on the internet. It was, we were pretty mature at that time, just in general as a society with digital stuff. The iPhones didn't exist yet, so you didn't have iPhones, Blackberries, maybe some early ones, but I think most people were using like the Motorola Razor, maybe back then. Maybe that wasn't even out yet, but
you have to push the button 3 times to get a letter on the thing for a text message.
Yeah. So, 9/11 comes along. And so the NSA, I'm sure as we were getting there, they were like, man, it'd be nice to capture some of this data and do some more things with it. They probably were capturing it. And I'm guessing 9/11 gave them kind of this like free pass to justify that previous collection. Like, shit, we're collecting all this data. We're collecting all this data. We probably shouldn't be collecting this data. What are we going to do? 9/11 happens. Like, whoa,
Let's
Patriot
collect
Act.
more.
Yeah. So I think that's all been sort of lost in the annals. But so we turned them from like this quiet signals agency to like this full digital gods. I mean, they have whatever they want, and they have some of the best. Well, they do have the best tools that I know of to do all this shit. So we talked about the bulk data collection, other things. So that I mentioned FISA, Section 702. FISA Section 702 is really about international communications surveillance. NSA does this too. This is the second thing post 9/11 that we gave them. FISA Section 702 is supposed to target non-Americans, but they're picking up a shitload, like, I don't know, whatever the gigabytes, whatever the hell the most bytes are of U.S. citizen data. And that's happening as what I said before, incidental collection, Nobody's really forcing them to purge that data, but that's how they're getting it. It's under FISA 702, which is supposed to be focused on that international communication surveillance. But they're capturing all this U.S. stuff. Upstream surveillance, a couple of programs that and I'm not going to go into detail about these programs, but feel free to Google them. Do your own research. I already mentioned, PRISM. That one did come out public, and there was a lot of news about it when it came out. X Key Score. That's all one word. X Key Score. Another one you may want to look up is Storm Brew and Fairview. These are both taps that are directly into the internet backbone.
What is the internet backbone for someone that doesn't know how the internet works?
Internet backbone. So if you, the way routing works is on the internet, it's called autonomous systems. So these are groups, like little territories, I guess, on the internet. So the backbone is, gosh, who is it nowadays? There's one out in California, Google Backbone.
Is that like
It's
the
changed now.
DNS, or is that
No.
beyond that?
No, it's a circuit backbone. So this is actual physical infrastructure.
Okay.
Big fiber. Reston, Virginia.
The underwater cables and stuff?
No, those would connect to backbone.
Okay.
Those would connect backbones.
Gotcha.
But it's shit, I can't remember the name of that company, and I did an assessment of them for Wells Fargo back in 2000-ish. I don't know. I'll have to look it up because I can't remember the names anymore. But so I mentioned Prism. Prism was working with big tech, right? Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and working with them to get data. There's also Fairview and Stormbrew. Fairview and Stormbrew are used directly in the internet backbone. And that's what routes all traffic. Like every single bit of traffic going from here to there goes across the backbone.
Like the freeway where you're going from 5 lanes to 2. It's like that, but with data.
Yep. And that's called upstream surveillance. So that's the third thing that they got, after 9/11.
That never really gets talked about.
No.
Much.
No, none of this shit does, man. I mean, in the news, when Prism first broke, it was in the news for sure, but it
had a cycle, basically.
Yeah, and it was a pretty short cycle. I mean, most things tech are a really short cycle for normal people, meaning non-tech people. It's just, if you went to ask your mother, ask somebody on the street, hey, tell me about Prism, they would, what are you talking about? That's, it's completely swept under the rug nowadays. But it's okay. So those were two other things. Other pieces that the NSA has that they didn't necessarily have pre 9/11: encryption backdoors and exploits. Here's another one you can look up if you want for another project. Bull Run, all one word, BULL. Those were efforts, but Bull Run was meant for is to deliberately weaken global encryption standards. So purposefully make data encryption less secure so that NSA can get into it with less effort.
So any of the new algorithms, they're essentially building in access.
No, not building in access, just purposely pushing to make them weak.
Not adopt stronger things.
Yeah. Internationally. But they have also, and the other thing that you're mentioning, they have paid vendors to put backdoors into encryption tools.
Didn't they get busted with this thing called the Clipper chip?
Oh, that was 93. That was way
that's
before
way
9/11.
back. Okay.
Yeah. 92, 93. Are you looking at that up right now?
Yeah, I'm looking up the Bull Run thing right now. And
Clipper chip was pretty old. Other things. So I've already mentioned. So these are 4 things already. The bulk data collection, international communication surveillance with the FISA 702. That's that incidental collection thing on U.S. citizens. The upstream surveillance, meaning tapped into internet backbone. The projects that I mentioned on the upstream surveillance were Fairview and Stormbrew. And then the encryption backdoors and exploits, mentioning Bull Run. And not unlike Clipper chip was
hardware.
Well, they were developing it themselves as an encryption piece to be used commercially, whereas what NSA is doing now and has been since at least 9/11 is paying people that are
They're
not the
paying
encryption
for
itself.
access.
They're paying people that are making tools that implement encryption, paying them to implement a backdoor into it. Apple said "fuck you" to that one, which is one of the one more reason why I'm not anti-Apple, much more pro-Apple, I guess. Number 5, tracking devices and geolocation. This is here's another tool if you want to look up. Co-Travel is a tool that analyzes whether or not two phones have been in close proximity, tracking associations and movement patterns, cell phone pings, cell phone tower pings, GPS metadata, location tracking, location services. Even when location services is turned off, NSA can take care of all that for you. And again, and most of that, some of that is pretty sophisticated tool stuff, but a lot of it is negotiations behind the scenes that you don't have, privy to. Like being able to still access locations when location services is turned off. That's not a hack. Working with implementers of location services stuff. That's number 5. Number 6, social graph mapping. This is where they built maps. They actually have built maps, and I've seen them, where they associate you with your friends, your colleagues, family based on calls, messages, social media, email. It's a big map, and it's kind of like one of those spider things. Excuse me.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever.
Yeah, when you click it. And all that is used for quote unquote pattern of life analysis to determine who's interesting. That happened after, or still happens actually, after 9/11. Activity monitoring. So you've got all this other stuff, right? And all I'm saying, when I'm going through these things is I mentioned that NSA got God mode. Like anything, anywhere that they want, they got. Then this is how they do it, right? So 7, the internet activity monitoring. So they already worked with big tech. You already worked with internet backbone providers. Now working with your ISPs, internet activity monitoring through your ISPs. Other things, third-party cookies, ad networks. They run their own ad networks.
Didn't know that. That makes sense, though.
Yeah, they run their own ad networks. And they work with ad networks. They cooperate with ISPs and other tech companies. And that's for passively tracking your web browsing and activity, even Tor and VPNs. I've been
Tor was a
targeted.
government project. It makes sense that that's not what you think it is.
Right. Yep.
But that's the dark web. It's safe.
Right. Yeah. No. It's gotten to the point, it used to be that you could figure out ways even to be anonymous in places. You know what I mean? To be anonymous. And you can't really anymore. You can be
You
anonymous.
probably could, but it'd be like you wouldn't be doing shit. It'd be, yeah.
I don't even know how you could now. Even if you have the FBI top 10 most wanted, right? And they're like, oh, it's so hard to find them. If they really wanted to go, you could go get them.
Yeah.
But they're working on other things probably right now. Because what could you possibly do that isn't already part of the web?
We haven't even talked about satellite. That's a whole nother world.
All right. So number 8, hacking targets and network implants. So tools that they do have a tailored access operations group that creates tools. High-end hacker tips. You've seen some of those, leaked on the web over the years.
It is interesting. We're starting to get more. I feel like it's just another smoke and mirror game. We're starting to get more people talking, people coming out from Tao, talking about some of the things. There's even, I guess they tried to make a podcast called like Declassified or something where they're talking about NSA stories. I think they're trying, trying.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how you'd be a whistleblower and avoid consequences. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You lost the power. Go lock yourself in like the Venezuelan embassy or some shit.
Hey, didn't someone do that?
Yeah. Number 9, surveillance by proxy. This is another thing that's kind of, it's post 9/11. And it's always been there, but this is really cooperation with, allies. The Five Eyes Alliance, US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, sharing intel. And essentially it's you spy on ours, we spy on yours, then we share. So whatever we didn't get through all these other things, we share data too. So
yeah, they're
which is kind
spying
of
on each
shitty
other.
because I don't know. I mean, when you have like zero control over any of your data and zero control over your privacy, I mean, are they sharing my information with Canada and Australia and the UK too? Fuck, I don't know. Probably. I have no idea. I mean, I don't know what the benefit would be.
Do you think that all of this still exists, not because of 9/11, but because we have this acknowledgement that spycraft and that sort of espionage world is legal? If there was a way to kibosh that, that could change some of these things? Or no? Is that kind of like too deep?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you get back. I don't know how you get back to this beyond, I mean, you never want, never, ever, anywhere, like a civil war or anything like that. When an organization or somebody has all the control, the only way you can get it back is to take it back. They're not going to give it back. I mean, they're not going to be like, our bad here. Let's destroy it all and we'll give you a certificate of destruction to go with it.
Yeah,
It's
that won't happen.
And the only thing you can do with data that's been taken or stolen or compromised, you can never get it back. The only thing you can do is make it worthless to whoever took it. And I don't know what the strategy would be, for my privacy. Right.
It's not even it's way past data. It's your life. Yeah, it's changed.
Yeah, and I think, I'd be remiss to think that, some of this stuff wasn't going on pre 9/11, but post 9/11, you just turned on the spigot and you became bold about it. It was like, yeah, of course we're collecting this data. We're protecting the United States. We're protecting national security. There haven't been any more terrorist attacks, have there? And that's the justification.
Right.
Right. It's like, well, okay, but does that mean, is it worth, this kind of sounds crazy too, but is it better to have another terrorist attack and have us have our civil liberties? I don't know. We've just given up so much. And I think, like I said, for people, general people, it's business as usual, right? It's like lemmings. It's like they just go about their day. It's funny how sometimes movies seem to parallel like life. It seems like closer and closer to like the Matrix,
It sure does.
where like if you're paying attention, like, oh shit, what the hell's going on? And most people are like, what? You crazy? This is some conspiracy theory. Okay, maybe. I doubt it. I'm not that kind of guy. And there's evidence, there's plenty of evidence to support these things. So, and that's the NSA, right? We've also got, other civil liberties that I think we've given up, and inadvertently, who would purposely give up their freedom?
No one. If they're not, if you're making a calm, rational decision, I don't think anyone would. But it's all made under emotional discomfort.
Yeah. Post 9/11, everybody was freaking out. Mom, Dad, help me. I'll give you all the power. And we were told it was going to be temporary. But here we are 25 years later, and it's gone further than it was after 9/11.
Didn't they even rename the Patriot Act? So, like, it's different now? I thought they renamed it as a way to, like, hide it or something.
Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe. Yeah. But it's funny, too, that they named it Patriot Act. Mm-hmm. Like, you being for this makes you like it's a patriotic thing. And it's patriotic to not question it. But
trust
is it?
Us.
Right. So I think another way you could probably back this out would be if you had a truly altruistic leader or leadership, a leader that truly is in the game for the right reasons, doesn't have any self-interest, is there to serve the best interests of the United States, that kind of person or group of people, then I think those kinds of people would probably willingly give up that data, or at least put up the right fences around it to make sure that it's not being abused, that it can't be used against us. The Constitution's like a beautiful, document that protected us from a lot of this shit. So anyway, there you go, man. There's civil liberties. Other things that you might find interesting. So I mentioned in my blog post earlier that I wrote today, that was the basis for today's podcast. I mentioned, section 702 of the FISA Act. So the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, that's been there for quite a while. Pre-8, this would have been before Section 702. I've already kind of beat that in, but 702 just gave so many more open pieces. TSA, I mentioned in my blog post that the TSA's budget keeps climbing while they miss fake weapons tests in 95% of the time. So it's a lot of this is like security theater too, right? We do these things to protect you, and we're doing our best. And how many people, I think people feel safer that TSA is there, but how effective are they actually? So in 2015, DHS did an internal investigation of TSA, and undercover investigators were able to smuggle mock explosive and or banned weapons through airport checkpoints 95% of the time. So that was pretty bad. So they did it again in 2017, had some improvement, but still the rates were around 70%. So it got better. 70% failure rate is pretty damn bad. Mm-hmm. Budget, fiscal year 2025, the budget for TSA, the president's budget, is $11.8 billion, which is $2.3 billion more than last year. So the budget continues to raise, which is what the government does. I mean,
spend more.
Yeah, I mean, hate Doge, love Doge, I don't give a shit. But the one thing I do like is, like, whenever government expands, it never contracts. You know what I mean? They never, like, the budget, but TSA's budget.
It's like power. You're not going to give it back.
Right. So, I mean, it'd be nice.
So what do you
to have
do
some
instead
accountability
of
for TSA?
Instead of giving your money back, let's just go buy 10 million Microsoft licenses that we don't need.
Be awesome, right?
I feel like they might have got busted with too many Microsoft licenses.
Who did?
Government. There's one department, Doge fucking found that. I actually feel like the whole Doge thing is more like doing identity cleanup, because they're out there like sending all these emails. They're like, if you've ever had an Active Directory, you know that's fucking shit. So anything that you're buying from a vendor is based on shit, because it's all on license cost. So if that's not clean, you're overpaying on everything. And I guarantee you, those multiple domains and forests are shit.
Right. All right. So whistleblowers. Let's talk about whistleblowers, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I think people that are listening, I think you got the point. We've given up a shitload of civil liberties. I gave you some things to go search out if you want to know more about some of the NSA stuff. That's pretty much the one I focused on the most, just because it's the one that's become the most powerful, for sure. I mean, NSA, like I said, pre-9 was signals intel, pretty much, and pretty limited. Now it's like not. All right, so some whistleblowers. Do you remember hearing about John Kiriakou?
I do not know that one.
That's a former CIA officer. In 2013, he was sentenced to 30 months in prison for disclosing classified information about interrogation practices, including waterboarding. He was just a whistleblower, right? I mean, he didn't disclose it. From my best of my recollection, he didn't just disclose it publicly. He disclosed it as a whistleblower, and I think he tried to follow the right processes, but got fucked for it. Richard Boyle was another one. That one's not as exciting, but Richard Boyle was a guy, Australian taxation office employee. He disclosed aggressive debt collection tactics targeting small businesses, which was part of a surveillance program in Australia. He was thrown in prison. I don't remember how long, but he was another guy. Ones that you, how about Reality Winner? Remember Reality Winner? Okay, Reality Winner was an NSA contractor. He leaked classified documents about Russian interference in the 2016 election. She got 5 years in prison.
Interesting.
Daniel Hale?
Don't know that one.
Daniel Hale, Air Force Intelligence, shared information about U.S. drone program killing civilians. He got 4 years.
Makes sense.
Julian Assange, you remember him?
Yep.
WikiLeaks.
Everyone knows him. Yep.
Not a classic whistleblower, for sure.
That's a platform. That's different, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but the problem is with whistleblowing is like, who do you blow? Who do you blow? Who do you blow?
So that's what he was trying to create, was a safe place for that.
Yeah, I mean, shit, it's like you almost purposely don't want to see some of the shit that you end up seeing, probably, because where do you take it? Who do you trust?
Right. Yeah.
Because
no one believes the shit's real. Like, could we really be that crazy or arrogant or whatever term you throw in there? Right.
Well, and the system runs this way on purpose. And you may not, and some of the people that are running the system may not know the actual purpose anymore. So now the purpose has become, well, it's the way we've always done it, or we collect this. I mean, they justify why they do what they do. So then you have a whistleblower who's, almost immediately seen as an enemy to the system.
They're just trying to do something that they think is right because it's like against their morals or whatever.
Or there's clear illegal activity going on. You gotta, how do you sleep at night if you don't do something about it? So you have, what's, I think, becoming more and more prevalent is whistleblowers being attacked publicly, being shamed, their character, their credibility. That stuff didn't used to happen nearly as much as it does now, and essentially silenced. Right? Whistleblowers, not much really changes after
They
people
get fired.
Right. In the pattern. So you've got the powerful insiders, and it sounds, and I can hear myself saying it, like it sounds conspiracy theory-ish, right? But why don't things change? When whistleblowers do come out, why are these people thrown in jail? And there's always two sides to the story, right? I mean, you hear one side, you oftentimes don't hear the other side. You don't get the full picture. You don't get all the context. So, granted, you only know what you know, but, we do know that there's clear abuse happening of our civil rights compared to what it used to be, what it should be. Yeah, but I mean, let's say you do, are you willing to risk everything for it?
I think we also don't really want to know how bad it is. Plausible deniability.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you've seen whistleblowers even with receipts in hand. And maybe we'll do the next episode on whistleblowers and how they've been demonized, some that you know about, some that you don't know about. Because even when they've had receipts in hand, they get charged under the Espionage Act or threatened with prison or financial ruin or God knows what else, suicide. And some even have committed suicide. I mean, it's whistleblower. I have a ton of respect for whistleblowers.
Yeah, it takes cojones for sure.
I mean, assuming you're a true whistleblower, because I mean, I've seen times when a whistleblower actually worked for, the inside, the ones that they were whistleblowing about as, false flags or other shit. So transparency gets criminalized. Power is held unaccountable. Fear keeps the truth buried, man. You know any whistleblowers that you want to talk about?
The couple that are on the top of my mind are the Chelsea Manning and then Snowden, probably the big one. There's some ones that come out recently. Some people putting stuff on Discord and apparently Signal now, I guess, too. I don't know. It's pretty crazy out there, but yeah, they show us a different side of what's actually happening. And it's hard to tell like what side they're on, I suppose, in some cases. Are they doing it like you said, are they put in there by something to do it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, take the Snowden one. I mean, that leak was in 2013 ish, I think. And it was huge. And immediately, and you'll never know the truth, the full truth. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So you have to go into it like that because immediately people sort of took sides on this issue. And I think few people kind of remain neutral, trying to figure out what the hell is this actually? Because 13, he contacted Glenn Greenwald. I don't know if he's
Yeah,
still
she's a
very active.
reporter.
Yeah, he's very active. He lives in Brazil now, I think.
Oh, I thought he was in Russia still.
No, Snowden. I'm talking Glenn Greenwald.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he contacted journalists, like 3 or 4 journalists, to blow the whistle about this surveillance state. And then he flew to Hong Kong and handed over these classified NSA documents that triggered the shit show, that happened after that. In those revelations, so in those documents were PRISM, was X key score, a whole bunch of phone metadata collection, global spying. So a lot of the stuff that we know today, and there's a lot of stuff that I mentioned today comes from his original. That and then, corroboration after that. His motivation for it, I mean, he said his motivation was that it was in the public's interest. It was in the best interest of the public to disclose this. That was his defense.
He didn't agree with what was happening.
Right. And so, but the U.S. charged him under the Espionage Act. And from Hong Kong, he went to Ecuador. From Ecuador, he got stuck in Russia. Actually, he was going to Ecuador, I think, when he got stuck in Russia, and he's been there since. The U.S. revoked his passport mid-flight.
Yeah, he got stuck at the airport, and then they said, well, why don't you just stay here? Don't really have
Right.
any other option.
Right. So it's been very divisive. Some view him as a hero. Some view him as a traitor. Some want to, hang him like you do traitors. Some people, want to elect him president, as a hero. What's the truth? I don't know. He's going to say it was. You have to believe that some of it had to be public interest, because how did he benefit from this?
His life is fucked.
He lives in Russia, for crying out loud.
And it's like, if you know anything about KGB spying Russia, like, dude, he doesn't have a normal life over there. Not possible. Anything outside, phone, like, dude, yeah, I don't know. Crazy. I didn't buy his book because they said if you buy the book, the government was seizing all the proceeds. So I listened to the book on Audible, and it was very interesting to hear about how he went through contracting the NSA and bouncing back and forth between all these contracting gigs. And it almost sounds like at one point he was helping build the infrastructure for some of these programs. And then he found out like how it was really being used. And that's when he's like, nope, I can't handle it. That's how I perceived his story from him. And then also, right, when there's whistleblowing, there's a specific way you're supposed to do that. Like you don't just see something and go to a reporter. You want to try to go through specific channels, raise awareness first. From what it sounds like, he tried to do that. If he didn't do that, then there's a different perception. But again, we'll never know. All that's zipped up tight.
Well, and it'll be he said, she said, because the U.S. government has doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the narrative, which is he put people at risk. He put lives at risk. That's what they said, quote unquote. He put lives at risk. And to date, there's been zero, as far as I know, zero credible evidence that ever supported that claim. There's no lives put at risk by anything that Snowden released.
I agree with that. Do run into a interpersonal conflict having served in the military, knowing how. Now, I wasn't high up or like special intel or anything, but knowing how like some things operate, I do think when you're releasing some things, some of it probably doesn't need to go to the public for safety of people or program. But on the other side, like if it's something like this seems over a lot of this seemed overreach, right? So again, it's like a balancing thing.
Yeah, well, it seems like, I mean, I think he had zero trust in the whistleblower avenue to go. And I don't know, I didn't read his book or anything or listen to it, but it sounds like he tried, sort of tried that out a little bit and it wasn't going anywhere. So I think what he was going for was this, shock and awe approach, right? Blow it out to the public and they'll get so outraged by it that they're going to
Something will
demand
change.
change. Yeah. And so I think he put all his eggs in that basket. And what we've seen with people always is, okay, yeah, basically.
What's on the news tomorrow?
Yeah. I mean, like we said, like half were he was a hero, half he was a traitor. So if I've already made up in my mind that he's a traitor, fuck him. I'm not listening to anything he says. I don't give two shits. Everything he says is a lie. He's a traitor. So half right away, their ears are closed. They're not even listening, not digging into anything. Nope. And then the heroes. But then, you fast forward to today, it's 12 years later. What changed? The only thing that I recall that changed, there was this act that came out, the U.S. Freedom Act.
That's
USA
what it was.
Freedom Act.
Patriot Act was Freedom Act. Yep. Okay.
Well,
I thought
the Freedom
it
Act
changed the name.
Well, the Freedom Act was like a reform, and it was supposed to end the bulk data collection, but it didn't really.
No, you're not. Stop.
Right.
It's already
So
full.
he lives in Russia. He's been a citizen of Russia since 2022. But it sounds like he's living an okay life. He's married, had a kid over there.
He does interviews and stuff every once in a while. I mean, I'm not like following him or anything.
But here's some things that have proved 100% what it proved, the Snowden thing. Number one, the government was lying about what it was collecting. That's
fact.
Absolute fact. Two, the war on terror had become a pretext for mass data hoarding. So exactly what we were talking about tonight, these changes that happened, including this war on terror, which was a national security thing, blah, 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 all ignited from 9/11. That was the pretext for this mass data hoarding. That's proven. That's 100% coming from the Snowden stuff. And number three, transparency is not a priority. Control is. And I think that's what
they continue to defend all the actions and the programs instead of just being like, yeah, we're doing it. At least if you do it, like we won't have to argue anymore. Like, all right, we know now.
Yeah. So let's end the episode with that. So this loss, freedom.
I will add one more comment, which I think is kind of peculiar. So when I went to college, I was not planning on getting into the InfoSec field. I wanted to be an IT analyst, just like regular IT stuff. And then Snowden happened with all this data stuff, and that is when I wanted to pivot into InfoSec. So that is, I don't know, I saw some sort of light or a different path about data, and that's how I ended up where I'm at.
All right. Cool, man. So next episode, we'll do some, actually, I want to talk about this Mark Lanterman story. So if you don't know, Google it between now and next week, and we'll talk about Mark Lanterman, then we'll talk about some whistleblowers, building off of tonight's show. So this is episode 28. It was Freedom Ain't Free, but the NSA is watching anyway. I'm going to leave you with this one thing. Transparency, safety, post 9/11, with all the stuff we've been talking about tonight, transparency and safety was not the priority, 100%. What was the priority? It's control.
I 100% agree. And I think it's important for anyone that has thoughts about this to share it, start conversations. I mean, the only way is to reach critical mass. Obviously, 2013, other things didn't have that happen. Keep the
Yep.
conversation going.
Yeah, and join us next Thursday. So we record these episodes every night or every Thursday night at 9:00 Central Time. Come join the chat and let us know what you think. Argue with us
I
or
want to
reinforce
poke the
us. Make us feel
bear.
good about ourselves.
I want to poke the bear before we go because we're short. Actually, we're not. We
It's
got
okay.
time. So I messaged you something this morning about United Healthcare.
Oh, God, yes.
How
Yeah, because
what did
last
you think
episode we
about
talked
that?
about accountability.
Yes, we talked about accountability, and it was very timely that I saw that post this morning, and I was like, what just happened? So the high level summary was some woman has a company and she was working with United Healthcare, and that
Christina
outage,
Morillo.
Morillo, that outage took down a lot of people's businesses from accepting payments. So
Actually, Christina Morillo, sorry. She's the head of security at New York Giants. The person we're talking about is Christine Meyer, Dr. Christine Meyer. So anyway, I keep interrupting you, but that's,
no, yeah,
yes,
it's all good. So she lost a whole bunch of money, and then they said, you don't have to. They gave them money, and they said you don't have to pay it back. But now they said you need to pay us back now, basically, instead of having the original like time to pay it back.
do you want me to read her post? I'll read it real quick.
Sure.
So she says 14 months ago, as a result of the United Health Group's negligence, Change Healthcare was crippled by a cyber attack. United paid a $22 million ransom. My practice lost over $1 million in revenue. Practices went bankrupt. People lost jobs, savings, and homes. This is a letter from Optum requesting repayment of a financial assistance loan. The amount I borrowed was actually $756,900. Today, when I called, I was told that they would withhold all United Healthcare reimbursements for services we provide to United Healthcare patients until they recoup their money. Yes, they're going to garnish our reimbursements because we are still reeling from $1.2 million in revenue lost as a direct result of their negligence. Remember when Andrew Whitty, he's the CEO, testified in front of Congress under oath that we would not be asked to repay this money until we are ready? I do. And then she attached the letter from Optum requesting payment. So yeah, it's really shitty pool, and it's a complete lack of accountability
What
because
the actual fuck,
right,
basically.
Change Healthcare, which is owned by United Health, and we talked about them last week, had this ransomware attack, and it cost some people, some clinics, it cost their entire business. And maybe we should do some investigative reporting on this. We should go find this and
Some of
actually,
these businesses.
because this might be a really good case study on just shitty accountability and how it's affecting people, and the people that are supposed to be accountable are not being held accountable. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that makes your blood boil. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that is the reason why I got into information security in the first place. I hate seeing people get taken advantage of, and
It's
yet
just
it
more and
happens
more
over
common.
and over and over again. Right?
It's getting worse, probably,
Yeah. Well,
because the
and
digital
we have to do
in
something.
the digital world, we still are not. People are not wanting to become aware, and we're intentionally keeping them unaware, so you can keep manipulating and getting away with whatever you want in the digital world if you are in a certain position.
If you're somebody in power. Yep. So there you go. We can take that one up some more too, because something's got to, I mean, it's got to change. The way of doing business like this and information security, it's not sustainable. It collapses eventually.
And that's ethics. I mean, what the hell is that?
Yep. And so we mentioned somebody by name, Andrew Whitty, CEO, United Health.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I'd like to have a
All right,
conversation.
I'm gonna end this stream.
All right. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody listening.
Appreciate you too, man.
Check us out next week.